Hi, Miles. Great to see you again, and welcome to the Recruitment, Marketing, and Sales podcast. It's good to catch up.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
You're very welcome. Now, I know, from the many conversations that we have and through the clients that we work with, that we're often asked, some very similar questions in terms of, it's a competitive market. How do we stand out? How do we get clients to work with us, on an exclusive basis, and as a partner of choice, not just kind of like one of many, and many more questions that I know we've chatted through. So I'm really excited about today's conversation, just to get your perspective on those questions and some others. But maybe before we do, just for everybody listening, I know your story, but maybe just give us kind of like, an overview of Miles and how you got to where you are and doing the work that you're doing.
Okay, certainly not by design. My background, look, I'm very corporate. I was fortunate to be very well trained. Didn't realise it at the time, but worked in financial
relate
services.
To that one.
Yeah, it's you just don't get it, do you? Until later in life, and you realise how much people were spending and investing in you. But no, my background, as I said, financial services, IT. Working within talent and staffing for a number of years, and I've spent thick end of the last, it'll be 20 years in August that I've worked as an independent business consultant, helping organisations be better than they are, helping them grow, helping them improve. So so without going into too much detail, that's pretty much me.
Yeah, excellent. So. And, just maybe give us a bit of an insight into the kind of recruitment companies that at the moment that you're working with, just so the audience have got a sense of.
Yeah. Sure, no problem. I mean, sector agnostic, certainly. I mean, I cut my teeth in IT and telecoms recruitment, doing contract recruitment. So that's a natural ground for me. But over the years, I've worked with organisations, whether it be unskilled, semi-skilled labour, temp-based, whether it's white-collar, permanent, blue-collar, technical, non-technical, healthcare, driving. At the moment, right now, I'm working with organisations that are doing financial services, that are doing property, that are doing engineering, doing data, AI, and very, very tech organisations. Because for me, what I do is, as I said, is agnostic. It's a case of making those organisations thrive, and it's similar methodologies. You might need to tweak the message slightly and change the tone of voice a little bit, and how you engage and articulate your message. But the reality is, it's the same process.
The processes,
similar types of organisations.
Absolutely. No, absolutely. And I guess it's it's kind of like similar to recruiting. That there's a process to recruiting, isn't there? And and I know the clients that we work with, they have some fantastic systems and processes. And I always talk about the fact that in a way marketing is no different. It's just there are systems and processes for marketing to follow. And of course, when you come from a recruiting background and you're embedded with those systems and processes, it's not, it's new, looking at marketing systems, it's just new, isn't it? And yet it's all about system and process. So let's kind of like sort of think then, about today's conversation, which is very much in looking at how can companies maximize their client potential, and answering some of the key questions I think that people do have on their minds. So maybe how about starting with, how do you make the most of the clients that you've got? Because, when we're talking to clients, and they start marketing, going out to your existing database, people that have got an experience of you, but maybe that relationship has lapsed, looking at the low-hanging fruit, that's a great way to start, isn't it? So, how do you leverage and maximise that client base?
I think for me, the starting point is, well, you've got to understand what's there to understand what you need to go and get and whether it's worth going to get. It's as simple as that. So, one of the key things for me is knowing and understanding your customer. What do we currently have? What could we actually get? And then the challenge is then how do we go about getting it? And that is quite challenging because, if you're doing the same thing that everybody else is doing in the same way, adding the same value, and don't get me wrong, everybody says that their service is better than everybody else's, and that's what makes us different. I'm sorry. Heard that so many times, and clients aren't going to fall for that. So the reality is what can we do that makes us different? What can we do that sets us apart? Things, that's what we need to start thinking about. And can we do more? How do we do more to improve not just the relationship with the client, but importantly, improve the value add. Take some of the, find where those pain points are and be a solution to some of their problems. Not just a sort of we've got a product we want you to buy, but how can we help you? That's really important.
Yeah, and I think sometimes we find recruiters generally are big action takers, aren't they? And they're very, very, very focused. And so when it comes to marketing, they want to dive in there and start implementing strategies. And yet, in order for those strategies to be as effective as they could be, taking that time to do some of that foundational work, i.e., understand who is it that you're targeting, and what are their problems, what are their challenges. Sometimes that piece can get missed because people are so busy wanting to jump into the action. And I don't know if that's something that that in the way that you work and the kind of work that you do that's something that often gets missed.
Oh, look, I mean, if you've got the same product or a similar product to what most other people have got, it's a bit like you've got a market stall, haven't you? And your clients are just walking through the marketplace and you're just shouting at them and hopefully attracting them and come and buy my apples because my apples are rosier and invariably cheaper. And we want to avoid that race to the bottom, don't we? But it's an interesting point you make, Sharon, because I think the trouble is, I suppose one of the problems I see a lot in recruitment is, particularly at a consultant level, they're very short-term driven and motivated and rewarded for short-term success. How many contractors have we got out? What's our GP looking like next week and next month and so on and so forth. So okay, so one of the real issues is the short-termism that I see a lot in recruitment. Consultants are under pressure to perform now, to perform today, this week, this month. How much have you got on the board? And quite often to go and do a more consultative sell, to do a solution sell, to do a deeper dive, you need to spend time with those clients. You need to be not just talking to them about, and don't get me wrong, people don't do that in the way that they used to in the olden days. It's not about, have you got any jobs, mate, type of scenario. But the reality is we need to be talking about what are your plans, Mr. Client? What's happening? What things have you got going on in your business that's going to affect your talent planning and management? How can we be part of, what you need from your talent going forward as an organisation? And for me, there's a conflict quite often in the way that we need fees on the board and a solution sell, and it's why successful organisations that have got deeper rooted relationships with clients and have more than contingent, no win, no fee business, those organisations invest in people to invest time with their clients and see the value in taking time to map out the customer, to understand the client, the pain points, the challenges, the issues, to get to know not just the hiring managers, but to get to actually infiltrate the whole organisation, because that's an investment of time. It will pay off, but quite often it won't pay off in the short term, and that's where quite often the problem lies. Yeah,
and I guess also it's moving away from that that transactional sell, as you say, into not just consultative in a way, but also looking at the business as an account and not, one or two relationships, isn't it? And just it becomes a much more strategic, conversation.
Absolutely, and yeah, I mean, it's very easy to get comfortable very quickly with a client, and I've heard it said many times that I've got a great relationship with them, and they won't go anywhere else, they won't use anybody else. And the reality is, we might have one, maybe two very good relationships. The challenge often is that relationships might be in one area, or they might be at a certain level. Do we have a director level type of relationship? And quite often, things nowadays, clients have options. It's
they
simple
do.
As that. And
they
change,
have a lot of
change
options,
happens. Don't they? They do. Doing nothing's one of their options. Changing suppliers an option. Outsourcing as an RPO is an option. And again, I've seen more than one situations where clients of mine have thought there's no threat, there's no issue, there's no problem, and all of a sudden they get told by their really good friends now, because they've had relationships for 3, 4, 5 years with these clients, that they can no longer use them because actually the business has now told them they've got to now use a different approach, and we've now got this other provider, or we've got this software, or there's this neutral vendor that's been appointed. And the agency sat there saying, well, what happened there? Well, what happened was you weren't having the right conversations at the right levels, so you weren't even at the table when those decisions are being made. And that's a big challenge, isn't it? Particularly if, as I see with a lot of agencies, you might have high concentration levels, too much business with too few clients. It's like, oh my goodness, you get your arms all over them, get around them, get into them, on top of them, understand them, because you can't afford to lose. If you've got more than 5% of your business with any one client, that is a massive risk to you as an organisation.
It is, and I think like you say, I do experience that with smaller organisations, and I think one of the things that often will get them thinking and engaging in marketing is that realisation that they've got too many eggs in one basket, and they are exposed, and they may well be long-standing clients, but yet, as you say, if those relationships, let's say the account is dependent upon only a small number of relationships, all you need is one person to leave, somebody new come in, and that changes the dynamic, doesn't it? And how often?
Absolutely.
How often have we worked with? Go on, sorry.
No, I was going to say you're absolutely right. It really does. I mean, part of the, we talked earlier about, the importance of process. We shouldn't be a slave to process. It's not a case of, computer says this and therefore we do it, or, the flow chart says we go there, so we have to do it. But having rigor in your process and procedures is important. It's another reason why, if ever you go in to an agency that is probably north of 40 consultants, quite often what you see in those organisations is a structure that they put in place around their important clients. Some of them call them key clients. There's a number of different things that they'll do, house accounts or whatever. But, they have a very different process for how they manage their important customers and how they categorise those customers as well. Why do they do that? They do that because we need to protect what we've got. We need to make sure that we're offering as much as we possibly can to them, to keep them sweet, to keep them friendly, and those relationships need to be broader and deeper than they will for a typical transactional business. I mean, the other benefit, obviously, you've got of having relationships at that level is you get the opportunity to do more than just spot business. That's a great advantage for recruitment businesses. No win, no fee is okay. But it's short term, it's tactical, it's functional. But if you can start working with clients where they'll give you projects of 20, 30 roles over 6 or 8 months, or you can get an agreement in place where there's a management fee structure in place, not just we get all our money when we make placements. You can get an extended agreement over maybe 1, 2, even 3 years when you built that confidence. That for me changes the culture of a recruitment business, because nobody likes spending time in a wasteful manner, and if all you're doing is contingent recruitment, the reality is even the really good ones that are maybe filling 1 in every 3 vacancies that they get on a permanent basis, that's still only 33% efficiency, isn't it?
Yeah.
I don't know anybody that likes to work in a 33% efficient way. So the more contracted business you get, the more secure that business is. You're investing. You'll invest your time, more and be keener to engage and get more out of that relationship because you know that your work is going to be rewarded with success.
And I think that's an interesting point because I think certainly we're sort of having more conversations with people who are either moving to retained, considering that, and we'll have perhaps some hesitations about it because they might be in their comfort zone, or they might see that suddenly they have to go from contingent to retained rather than it's a journey as well, isn't it? But what are your thoughts and what advice would you give to companies who I think are increasingly recognising that if you are solely contingent, you are quite exposed as a business, and I think retain seems to be getting a lot of is talked about an awful lot, and yet certainly my experience, and I know you and I have spoke very briefly about this before, is that perhaps smaller SME recruitment companies do see RPO and some of those service offerings as something that only much larger organisations, would offer. And I know that you think quite differently about that. So I just wondered maybe if you could just speak into that for a minute.
Yeah, no, I will do, absolutely. In terms of RPO, I mean, there are lots of different ways to recruit beyond contingent recruitment. You meant, single retainers, project managed campaigns. You get into the RPO space and, there's project RPO, there's partial RPO, full RPO. And clearly as an SME agency, you're not going to go in and do a full RPO solution, doing all of the talent planning, all of the talent strategy right through and beyond onboarding. That's going to be beyond your capability. Yeah. But it's about thinking about what can we do beyond the recruiting, either side of that will add value, and what could we add into the recruiting process that will also add value as well. So it's about what technology could we maybe deploy. The really smart people out there, agency-wise, some of the smaller ones, 1 or 2 I'm working with at the moment, are right on the cusp now of being able to deploy applicant tracking systems, but not as it's my tech, I'm the agent, I'm going to be controlling, but actually going to clients and saying, here's some brilliant software to help you be better at recruiting. And if you also want us to be part of the supply chain, we can tap into that. So they're actually helping the client with their direct hiring, helping the client actually manage process better, also being able to then dovetail solutions into that themselves. And what that's doing is that's lifting you away from being a bloody good recruiter to, hey, this is my talent partner, this is my advisor, and all of a sudden you become that go-to person. Oh, maybe we need some salary benchmarking. Maybe we need a bit of advice about where we should advertise. Never be afraid to help your client hire better for themselves. Because if all they think you're interested in is getting the next job on and charging the next fee, they're going to treat you in that way. You're just a supplier. That's all. That's all you ever are. We've just got to move away from that. So I think, thinking about pain points. What are your challenges as a business? Is it time to hire, cost per hire, quality of hire? What about your retention levels? Is it managing the process that's awkward and difficult? Don't get me wrong. There's probably about 50 things I could go through as a long list, but those first 5 are the big important ones, and usually there'll be 1 or 2 or maybe even 3 of those that somebody will sit up and say, actually, we've got an issue here. We need to be better at that. One of the big things that I'm hugely passionate about, and I think we're going to see massive change in the industry in the coming 24 months, 48 months, is the importance that DEI is going to play, diversity, equity, inclusion, having data around that, making sure processes are fair. That I see more and more now becoming mainstream over the next sort of 48 months. Big organisations are under pressure to demonstrate that they're doing everything they can to bring more diversity in to their organisations, to see the culture shift. And I think as an agency, you need to start having those conversations now with clients. Ask them what they're doing about this. How they're going to change. Even the small end clients are changing, because quite often as somebody in the supply chain, you're being put under pressure by those larger organisations to do more in that space as well as a supplier. So everybody's got a vested interest, in that. So I think there's going to be some really interesting developments in the next. It's happening now, but I think mainstream. I think it might be a couple of years away, but it's coming definitely.
There's momentum sort of like building, isn't there? And it's happening at different rates, I think, in different sectors. And I guess it needs the industry to step forward and start driving it, as opposed to perhaps being reactive and being at the effect of clients and their clients, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. Well, the thing is, we talked earlier about differentiate yourself.
Yeah.
And look, I don't think anybody can be unique anymore. It's almost impossible. And if you are, you won't be unique for very long, because people are going to copy it. But it's about how can you lift yourself out of being the same as the other 90% and make yourself one of the 10%. And I think you've just got to almost hang your hat on a number of things to say, this is what we do and this is what makes us different. And find clients who will be receptive to that. And I think that's one of my big learnings down the years is, don't treat all clients the same. And actually, there's a lot of clients I've found that agencies work with that when we go through a process of customer segmentation and you look at something about what level of relationship do you have, what are they as a client, if you sort of apply like a Boston Matrix sort of thing around that customer group, as well as where are they as a business within their marketplace, all of a sudden you start realising you're sort of working with people that you probably don't really want to be working with, and maybe actually clients that aren't going anywhere and just actually wasting a lot of your time and energy. So one of the important things for me is how do we find the ones that are going to be receptive to our messaging, and then invest the time and effort? Because if you try and be all things to all people, you won't have enough bandwidth to do it. So that's a big thing.
Yeah, and I'm glad you touched on that, because I think I know one of the things that you talk about is how do you know who's the right customer for you to work with, but is that they are also right for you, I think is the way that you phrase it, isn't it? Because often we might hear people, having a good old kind of like, moan, about a certain client. And when you get into the detail of it and you're asking a few questions, not all the time, but sometimes, the case arises that the person that requires the most time to serve and deal with often are the lower value clients. And yet if you've got a lot of those, that's consuming a lot of time for not a lot of
absolutely.
revenue.
Absolutely. I refer to them as energy vampires, and they are revenue vampires. And quite often, I've got there's a client that I was working with a number of years ago down in the Midlands, and we went through an exercise, and they had this client, and they're really important, this client, because we did £180,000 last year, and they were our biggest client. But it was only when we went through the process of understanding how much time we invested in that client, how many vacancies we actually worked on compared to how many we've actually filled, how many CVs we've actually sent over there, how slow the feedback is. In the end, we ended up terminating that client relationship and walking away from it. And everybody got quite twitchy initially around it. But 3 months later, everybody's like, wow, that was the best thing we ever did. Because we've now got all this time to invest in clients that actually want to work with us. Do give us feedback. Don't jerk us around. Don't lie to us that tell us we've got something exclusive and then we find out that it's been with 3 other agencies for the last month. We've got to sniff those people out and start working with people that give us a level of respect. You know, I genuinely believe, Sharon, that recruitment gets a really bad rub.
I
and it's
agree,
not
Miles.
fair.
Yeah.
You know, we should be regarded as a professional services company. We're a B2B solutions provider. And I tell you what, good recruiters are amazing in terms of their resilience, their tenacity, the value that they want to add, how much they want to please, and really, you know, sometimes sort out an absolute mess that a client's making of their talent acquisition and do a brilliant job for them. But unfortunately, still seem to end up being abused and used. And maybe that's because quite often the end client still sees us as an industry that is that ambulance chasing, that no win, no fee, you know, unprofessional. And you know, I think we've got some way to repair that sort of perception in the marketplace. But you know, from my understanding and from what I see, there's a hell of a lot of brilliant recruiters out there who just need to be confident, more confident in themselves, who they are. You know, we're the recruitment experts, you know, and I don't know many HR people that will turn around and say they love recruiting and they love recruitment. Why they like to outsource it? Because they hate it.
Yeah.
It's the rubbish end of their stick. I was going to use another word, but it's a rubbish end of their stick. They don't want to deal with it. And if they can get the right person that they can trust to do that for them, then, you know, happy days. And I think that's where we need to get to. But it's finding people that we have that mutual respect for. That's the key for me. You know, you don't go and spend dinner having dinner with somebody if you don't like them, if you don't find them funny, if you don't find them entertaining. And I know it's a slightly different type of relationship we have with our clients, but you know, for me, I want to go and spend time with clients that I enjoy their company, that we have engaging conversations, that sometimes we can have some debate and we can disagree. We don't have to agree on everything, but we actually have that level of respect. And I think there are things that you can do as an organisation. You know, I call it sort of most valuable customer traits, but understanding what would our ideal client look like? What behaviours, what characteristics do they have? What makes them right for us? And also what would make us right for them? And if we can understand that and somehow rank and score that, rank that, then you get an understanding of actually, out of my 50 clients, there's probably these 10 that should be really special. Now, we might not be making the most of those 10 at the moment, but those are the 10 we need to go and invest the time. Because those are the 10 who are going to be receptive to innovation, who are going to sit up and listen when we say, look, something's happening, this is really important, where maybe we lead the conversation about DEI data and the importance of understanding fairness in recruitment process, and rather than just sort of, you know, pay lip service and show no interest.
Yeah. And I guess, you know, that is often, I think, where, you know, we see many websites where, you know, companies will perhaps, you know, talk about, you know, their vision and their mission and, you know, these are their values. And they're kind of like, you know, they're on there. And it makes me think of my corporate days when, you know, you'd walk into, you know, the reception of a pharmaceutical company and they'd have these big, huge, you know, pictures on the wall with their vision and their mission and their values. And that's the first and the last that you might hear of them. You know, today we have them on websites, and yet I guess why I bring that into the conversation is because, you know, if you've gone to that effort to say, look, you know, this is what we're about. This is kind of like, this is what we're aspiring towards. This is how we want to work. This is what you'll experience, you know, of us as an organisation. If you don't then use those values and look at, well, look, if that's kind of like what makes us tick, if that's what's important to us as a business, well, then does it not make sense to then look for organisations where there is a values match?
100%. Yeah, I mean that's exactly what we're looking for. I don't think
we're quite there, though, are we? Because, you know, as you say, I think that there is still that short-termism and that, I guess, that mentality of, you know, go and get business rather than thinking of what business do we want and how do we go and get that business.
Yeah, I mean that is absolutely fundamental to it, and one of the key things I think, you know, for many organisations, they probably sort of feel like they're looking up at a mountain right now and thinking, I know where I want to be, but where I am and where I need to get to, bloody hell, that seems an awful long way away. And how on earth do I get there? And I don't think sometimes, and I'm not trying to sell myself at all, but I think sometimes that's where organisations need to reach beyond their own sort of level of knowledge and expertise and actually reach out to people who can help support them on that journey. I mean, I was in a meeting the other week in Manchester and rather stumbled on an interesting analogy that seemed to resonate with the room, but because I do a lot of work within professional sport, bizarrely enough, leadership coaching and mentoring, and with the professional football clubs that I work with, it's really interesting. I go in and I work around the academy managers and the heads of coaching. And it dawned on me that, the players that I see, every time I see those players, 99% of the time they're practicing. They're being coached, they're being trained, and they're out on the pitch, but they have physical coaches, they have mental coaches, they have strength and conditioning coaches, they're on special diets. But because all of that time's invested in the 1% that they're on the pitch to be the best they can be and get the result that they need to get. But when you come away from sport, and particularly in recruitment, it's the other way around. We spend probably 99.9% of our time on the pitch, so little time investing in ourselves, investing in our businesses, investing in our value propositions, for an awful corporate word to throw into the conversation. But let's look at our product and think, what more can we do? How do we want to grow? Do we want to do more of the same? Is it just organic growth? Can we do what we do in other areas? Now, that could be other geographies, it could be other sectors. Or do we want to do different things where we're already working and operating? What more value can we add into that process, away from being just a bloody good recruiter, but doing more things to facilitate a better process? And as I said earlier, there's so much now that you can go and adopt through third-party providers, whether that's doing really, really deep dive in terms of reference checking, qualification, verification, social media checking, testing, profiling. You could look at outplacement. The technology, the ATS side of things. There's so much. You don't have to be an expert in those things. You can go and get partners to help you, but build that into your proposition. Take it to your clients, and you'd be amazed sometimes how receptive they can be to. We'd love to be able to do that. Nobody's ever talked to us about that before. All of a sudden, you're on a different journey with that client, aren't you? Just by having that conversation.
Well, I think you are, and I suppose a couple of things came to mind really as you were chatting there. I think just on that last point, it's like. When you think about everything that, perhaps HR are involved in, trying to keep themselves up to date on all the different aspects of HR, it's incredibly challenging. And I think something that I often say to business owners as I'm chatting is that, and marketeers for that matter, we've all only got so many hours in a day, haven't we? And something I think that, I would not want to think how much we've invested in ourselves, both personally and professionally in terms of development over the years, and we continue to do so. But the beauty is that, we make all that investment, we spend all that time, but it allows us to distill it into, what works in marketing in our industry, so that other people don't have to do that. And I guess, if recruitment companies, just going back to the point that you were making, if they are able to take their expertise around, ATS and other kinds of software that's available, DEI sort of like software and things like that, that we're touching on, that's huge, because their clients don't have the time to go and look at every single piece of ATS systems that are out there, of all the different, DEI software. They haven't got time to do that, Miles.
No.
They don't have time to do that. So they are looking for, external expertise, to help them. So I think that's a huge opportunity. I completely agree. And I think the other thing as well is, I was interviewing a client recently, for the Recruitment Marketing Sales podcast. And I said at the end, look, from all your years of experience, and her business has kind of like been going for about 30 years, what would be some real pieces of wisdom that you could share with people who are at the earliest stage of that journey? And, the first thing that she said of the 3 things of advice was, don't do it on your own. Don't think that you have to, take this journey on your own. That there are people who can help you with different aspects of your business, whether it's, people like us from a marketing point of view, whether it's, someone like yourself, you can do that, the strategic kind of like planning piece and lots of other things I know that you do. But there are other people who can help you with different parts of that whole journey of building and growing a business and building teams and everything like that. So we don't seem to view it, though, in the same way as the sports world does. And let's face it, Miles, going back 20, 30 years ago, the sports world didn't embrace some of the things that they now embrace. So they've been on a journey, haven't they?
Oh, absolutely. My goodness. And that's all sports, every sport. When you look at, the elite professionals in sport of 20, 30 years ago, they wouldn't even get a look in professional sport nowadays. They wouldn't even be on the track or on the field or whatever. They're just not conditioned to the same level. And I think as businesses, I think it's exactly the same. We need to be on our A game at all times. We need to be optimized. We need to be efficient. We need to be effective. Sport embraces, and this is whether you're looking at, and it's cyclical. So some of these organisations have gone up, have gone down, and so on and so forth. But the reality is continuous improvement. Is one key thing, isn't it? The use of metrics, the use of data to understand what we're doing well, what we're not doing so well, but what do we need to change and why, and not get hung up about being perfect, but understanding what good looks like and knowing how to get there. Those are really critical things. And again, we go back full circle to the start of the conversation. I'm a real believer in this sort of plan, do, check, act approach to everything in business. Let's understand what we need to do. And let's go and do it. And do you know what? Some of it will work, some of it won't work. But let's do that review. And then let's go again. And for me, the entry point of a lot of the work I do with clients is doing that initial piece of work around maybe a 3-year strategy and or a 12-month plan. But the trouble is, there's no point doing that unless you're going to execute it, unless you're going to then review it. And importantly, you've got to tweak it every year.
Absolutely.
Minimum every year. You've got to redo it again because things change. Market changes, customers change, products change, technology changes. So you've got to review it every year and go again and do it in small stages. Nobody ever got to the top of a mountain by going straight up the shortest route because that's the most dangerous route and you're never going to get there. You climb Everest, don't you, by getting established, going to camp 1. But have I got the right equipment to get me to camp 2? Are the weather conditions right to get there? If so, let's go. If not, we might need to go back, get some more provisions, back to 1 before we go to 2. And it's the same as a business. Just because we know our destination and we know where we are, but how do we get there? And having the right partners, whether that's companies providing you with IT, companies providing you with legal advice, marketing support, you name it. You need a great team of Sherpas around to help carry your stuff. You're the one, when you get to the top, by the way, you're going to get the glory. And everybody's going to be, wow, look what they've done with their business. Or oh, they've sold for all that money. Aren't they amazing? But actually, it was all the great people around them because, Hillary would never have got to the top without his Sherpa. No way. No bloody way. Not a chance. Wouldn't have even probably got to bloody Camp 2, or above it without the Sherpas. Because those are the guys who know, they're the guys who know the pitfalls. Those are the guys that know the way, know the dangers, and can navigate their way safely through storms. And that's why people need to invest in people who've been there, seen it, done it, got the scars, can shortcut. And importantly, I think, Sharon, one of the things I always say, to people that I work with, it's not just what I can do directly for you, it's what I can do indirectly. It's the other people I know, I can stop you buying the wrong piece of technology. I can make sure that instead of, I don't know, paying 5% of gross invoice value for your invoice finance and your back office, you can get better for less than 30% of the price, and all of a sudden, boom, there's a £42,000 saving off your bottom line, and that's not going to cost me any time or money to give that advice and make some introductions, but it can be transformational for that organisation. So I think, why not surround yourself with people that you feel, and this is important, you feel are the right team for you. Yes. But in saying that, sometimes you've got to trade those people in and out a little bit. I've been on journeys with clients, really successful journeys, but there comes a point where it's like, my job's done. You need a different person now to take you on to that next place.
It's kind of like, it's not about creating, sort of like dependent relationships, is it? It's about enabling people, and we can take people on a journey so far. And then it's like they need somebody else then to take them on to that next level.
Absolutely.
So just kind of like thinking then, sort of in summary, because you touched on some really helpful things there. Let's say there will be, a whole range of recruitment companies and business owners, listening to today's podcast. And many of them will have businesses that are heavily reliant on contingent. Okay. So if someone is at that point where they realise we need to start doing things differently, what would be, let's say, your 3 pieces of advice of where to start making that transition away from that heavy reliance on contingency?
Yeah, it's crikey, blimey. That's a
I know. Sorry, that bit pressure. No pressure
question. No, that's all right. I mean, I think for me, the starting point with anybody is let's just step back from the business and let's look at our business. Let's be critical. Look at ourselves in the mirror. And not always think that we see a lion, this big, powerful sort of animal, but maybe we are a bit of a pussycat, and maybe, we need to just reflect, I think, and think, where are we now? But importantly, the important thing is where do we want to go and why? There's too many egos in recruitment. I think there's too much bloody testosterone flies around in recruitment still. And people thinking they need to be. Yeah, but it's true though. They think they need to be big. They think they need to be, this sort of thing. And it's like, no. This is about, you can have a great business. There's no shame in having a brilliant lifestyle organisation. There's no shame in having an organisation that you can say, do you know what? Actually, it's not going to be a trade sale. It's not going to be MBO. In fact, it's probably going to die when I retire. I'll just wrap it up. But what you need to be certain of in your own mind is, why am I here? Why am I doing this? What do I need from it in the short, medium and long term? Yeah. And then you can start building a plan towards that. Product will be part of that. Look, there is nothing wrong with contingent recruitment, but isn't it better to have longer term relationships, have contracted work, have maybe retained fees or maybe some RPO or something like that? But you have to. It's not about just saying, oh yeah, we want all that. But you've got to understand, is that right for our market? Is that right for our customers? Because if that's what we want to do, and we got the wrong customers for that? There's so many questions, and that's where having that independent set of eyes, that person that has been around the block a little bit, has seen lots of different things in lots of different sectors and markets, can maybe help you shape that in your own mind. But I think having a 3-year strategy is always a good idea, and what you set out to do at the start of that 3 years, you might get there, but you won't get there by a route you think you're going to get there, because it's the 12-month plan that's important. For me, it's great to chunk it up, so have a 3-year strategy, have a 12-month plan, chunk that 12-month plan up into quarters, and then don't try and do too much too quickly or too many things, because again you'll dilute what you're doing. What's important to do? What's the urgent, important stuff? Get on with that. Do that well. When that's done, then move on to the next thing. Because again, I think sometimes I see just organisations trying to do too much change too quickly. That will always fail. It's dangerous place to be. Change can be managed well and can be managed effectively. But likewise, sometimes I quite often see, particularly with SME agencies maybe less than 20 heads. You've got maybe one owner or maybe two principals in the organisation, and they're trying to do too much themselves.
Yeah.
You know, and they're still working in the business day to day, and it's like, hang on, your job's to work on the business, not just in it. You know, so you can't be that person working with all those clients. You can't be that person filling jobs and still work on the business, because you've got to spend time on it. And sometimes, you know, my job as an advisor, for want of a better phrase, is just to actually be that person that challenges them and says, hang on a minute, didn't we say we were going to do that? What happened? Stop being distracted by the shiny new thing. You know, just because everybody's using, I don't know, video technology, you know, all of a sudden, you know, don't necessarily say, right, we're going to do that. Don't do it just because everybody else is doing it. Make sure it's right for you, it's relevant, and it's going to add value and help you get where you want to get to. Because if you do anything that isn't going to be part of implementing your plan and your strategy, then why are you doing it? You know, because I've seen recruitment agency owners go off on really weird tangents. You know, one organisation I worked with a few years ago, I had to ask them, why are you all of a sudden doing education recruitment when your mainstay is construction? And it's there was this really good consultant that came, but come on, you know, it's unsurprisingly it didn't work out for them, because there was no purpose, there was no alignment, it was just like, oh, here's an opportunity, let's grab it, without really thinking it through. So you know, for me, it's have a plan, have a strategy, have a plan, review it regularly. I think importantly, don't overstretch yourself as an owner, as a principal. You know, you've got to empower other people in your organisation to take ownership, to take responsibility. You know, delegating effectively as a leader is really, really important. Allowing other people to be part of it, you know, will share that load, and will actually allow you to get on and do things in the organisation. You know, I think that's really, really important as well for me. You know, just surrounding yourself with good people. You know, that's again just absolutely key. It really, really is. You won't get there without a brilliant team of Sherpas. It's as simple as that. You just won't. You need to.
I like that story. I like that.
Yeah, and reach out to people that you know and trust, your peer network. Find out who they're using. Find out who screwed it up for them. Find out who's done it well for them. You know, and choose your partners bloody carefully, because it's really expensive to go and get a CRM and then have to replace it in 6 to 12 months. To build a website, then have to go and build another one in 12 months, 24 months. You know, getting the wrong. You know, it's just like hiring the wrong recruitment consultant, isn't it? 6 months down the road, they've billed jackal, or they've sucked a load of cash out, and now you've got to find another one. You know, it just holds you back. So do what you do with real purpose and real conviction, but take your time going through change and things like that, because if you rush to it, again, it's just a dangerous place, isn't it? And it has more chance of failure if it's hurried and rushed. It really does.
Well, Miles, that's brilliant pieces of advice and some real gems in that conversation. And I do love that Sherpa story and climbing the mountain. I might have to borrow that one if that's all right.
Feel free, absolutely. It just I'm a big fan of the great outdoors, and I just love watching programs about mountaineering, and I'm just in awe of what these people do and how they do it. But I think it's just such an obvious thing that you know, why don't we treat everything in that way? And you know, it's funny, isn't it? Maybe it's because our life isn't at risk, so we take risks with our business that we wouldn't take with our own sort of our own lives. But maybe we need to treat our businesses with a little bit more respect like that.
Yeah,
you know?
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, look, it's been great talking today. Thank you for some real gems and sharing some of your thoughts and experiences with us. And look forward to catching up soon.
No, Sharon, it's been an absolute delight having you know, being able to sort of contribute, and thank you for having me again. And I just hope people find this very useful and engaging.
I'm sure they will. Speak soon, Miles.
Thank you. Bye bye now.